The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now, 865-243-TALK. That's 243-8255. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back to another great week of the Patrick Riggins Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. Reminding you once again, you aren't alone. There are others out here, and our numbers are growing. Doing no small part to this radio show, of course. The radio station helping get our message out is the flagship station for the Patrick Riggins Show, 100.3 WNOX, here in scenic and pleasant Knoxville, Tennessee. If you'd like to see the goings-on in the studio during this broadcast, feel free to bring up the station's website. And where would that be? Well, it's at www.wnoxfm.com. There you can watch and listen to this broadcast via the in-studio webcam.
The internets.
At that there internet.
You just click, man. You just click and click and click, 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 click.
I don't need no internet. I can go down to the bar and talk to everybody I need to. One of the people you'll see hopping around and pushing buttons and running the mixer board is Tori, our show producer.
I'm just acting like I'm running the show.
Yeah, well, you know, that's more important than actually knowing what you're doing is looking like you know what you're doing.
And that's what it's about.
That is exactly what it's about. So, not raining today. It doesn't seem to be too bad.
Well, it was.
Well, not right now.
Not at the moment, but it looks like it's going to any moment.
But we are edging towards warm weather. So, one thing I noticed on the way in is even though it's not raining, people still can't drive.
I noticed that, yes.
You know, it's like if you're driving up the interstate, let's just say, for example, you're driving up the interstate and you look back and there's a car behind you. Oh, what would you do? Maybe, there is a car behind me. Maybe I will activate my turn signal and move to the right. I don't know. It's just a suggestion.
No.
No, not going to happen.
Or come to a complete stop, then signal. Turn right. I love that one. That's just wonderful.
Don't get out of the lane. Don't go to the emergency lane and turn right. Stay in the lane of traffic. Come almost to a complete stop, then turn right. Yes. I tell you, all of these people, if I get advance notice when the end of the world is coming, these people are in trouble. I am just getting a cement truck, and I'm going to load it up with cement so it'll be good and heavy, and then I'm going to put that railroad tie on the front of it and just knock people out of the way.
You ever seen Death Race 2000?
Is that what they do?
It's sort of like it. The cars are made to
just knock it.
Yes, machine guns, everything mounted on them, and rockets.
That'll be Patrick. Right after I finish that, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that railroad tie off that cement truck. I'm going to go over to Sam's or any of them, Costco too, and Home Depot, mount that sucker on the front of a cart and go down the aisle and knock the people out of the aisle that leave their basket right in the middle of the aisle and then stand on the other side of the aisle picking out something. I don't know if it's the left lane people or them just rile me more.
I'll tell you what takes care of the people at the store is if they do that, just pull up to their buggy and start shopping out of their buggy. It's legal. They've not paid for it yet. It's totally legal. Well, they're not going to like it, but
then I could just say, well, I thought this cart was sitting right in the middle. I figured maybe the store was stocking the shelves with it.
Look, you got s'mores Pop-Tarts. Oh, I love those. Thank you. Just take them and go.
Yeah. I say, well, surely someone wouldn't just leave their basket in the middle of the aisle. I mean, that would be being a jackass. I mean, you're not, are you? So I know you wouldn't be doing that. So I figured it was the stores. So oh, yes. Okay. Patrick's in a good mood today.
You feel better now?
No, I don't, because I know as soon as I go out there after the show and get the people driving aren't listening to this show right now. Well, there's a lot that do, but a lot that don't. Because I can tell they're sitting in that left lane. So
waiting on you.
Yeah, waiting. Yeah. So if they are listening to this show and sitting in that left lane, they're doing it to irritate me, which bugs me. And if they're not listening to this show and they're sitting in the left lane and they're doing it because they don't know what they're doing, that still irritates me. So I lose both ways on that. So just get out of the left lane. That's the point. If you want to get down to it, all this other crap's just a bunch of symptoms of the problem, which is get out of that left lane if you're not passing people. I don't care if it's a 2-lane road, one direction each way. If you're going slow, just pull in someone's driveway and let the rest of us by. We got someplace to go. It's, I guess maybe it's Easter. That's what it is. It's Easter,
yes.
And it's Sunday, and so it's like double Easter Sunday drivers. They're saying, I've got no place to go. I've got all day. I'll just block up the lanes of traffic and the aisles in the store. I guess the good thing is the store is mainly closed since it's Easter.
Yeah.
So a lot of them, you wouldn't have to put up with that. But the ones that aren't, those are the ones that would be driving me crazy.
Just let it all out.
Yeah, this first segment is like catharsis for Patrick. I wouldn't have this problem if I didn't run across this stuff driving in. What I need to do is drive in 2 hours before, come in the station, light some stress release candles, lay back in a little couch, and then just relax and decompress for 2 hours. And then I'll be ready to come in here and just breeze in and not scream and yell and want to kill people on the interstate.
Hey, you ought to drive in from Seymour all the way into this thing.
I don't
That's
think
a
I'd
long
make
haul.
it. I would be arrested. Well, anyway, we're up on the first break, Patrick Riggins Show. This show, we're going to talk about Obama and gun control and the Supreme Court and all sorts of goodness here. Lots of good ingredients on this show, so be sure and tune in this hour. Patrick Riggins Show. We'll cram as much in as we can, and we'll start in about 2 minutes. Be with us here.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back to the Patrick Riggins Show. This segment, I promise, not going to talk about bad drivers.
Got it out of your system.
It's out of my system.
I made him go outside,
Yeah,
vent, and walk around in a circle, and
run around the parking lot some.
he jumped up and down and cussed.
Yeah.
And
Breathed in, did the breathing exercises. So now calm and cool.
focused.
Squirrel! Yeah. All right, this segment, I want to talk a little bit about Obama and this, not really just him in particular, but this whole gun control debate. And I'm sure most of you have saw the spectacle that was going on this week with him and with his gun control bills looking more and more like they aren't going to get through Congress. He's reverting to this tried and true tactic of using women and children to try and get his unconstitutional legislation passed. Well, this last week, as I said, he had a press conference with parents of children who had been killed by guns standing behind him. What's really interesting is, that guns could even kill people, but I was under the impression it was people had to use it. But hey, that's me. Anyway, he was introduced by a lady named Katerina Rodgard, who's a gun control activist and proponent of gun restrictions on us, the American citizens. She's an activist, and here is why she's an activist in her own words.
I have been personally affected by gun violence. As a dance teacher, I lost one of my students at the massacre at Virginia Tech.
So she lost one of her students at the massacre at Virginia Tech. Well, I would think that she probably means killed instead of just lost them. because I'm thinking if she lost them, if you just retraced her steps, she'd probably find them. But that's me. But
Lost that money.
well, yeah. So she lost some tuition. So, yeah.
That was me who said that. So
the cards and letters and the email goes to Tori on that. But she lost one of her students there that were killed there at Virginia Tech, and that was in April 2007, the shootings on campus. Now, interestingly enough to me anyway, these activists never promote the cure of these shootings as arming yourself, allowing you to defend yourself. No, see, that's never the answer. But let's just look at that shooting real quickly. Guns were not permitted on campus, and there is a shooting. So something should change. Now, what could that be? What is allowing guns on campus, Alex? Yes, I knew that. I knew that one. But that one was really easy. Good answer, yeah. If you don't allow guns on campus and there is a shooting, that tells you something needs to change, correct? Well, the only other option is to allow guns on campus. In fact, that very option was put forth by Todd Gilbert in the Virginia House of Delegates in 2006, before the shootings at Virginia Tech. That bill was intended to forbid public universities in Virginia from preventing students from lawfully carrying a concealed handgun on campus. Now, Virginia Tech University opposed that bill, and it died in subcommittee without making it to the full House for a vote. At that time, the spokesman for Virginia Tech, a man named Larry Hinker, he praised the defeat of the bill, stating, "I'm sure the university community is appreciative of the General Assembly's actions because this will help parents, students, faculty, and visitors feel safe on campus." Of course, notice he said feel safe, not that you actually were safe. So where was the outcry? Where was Katerina when this bill, a piece of legislation that could have prevented more people from dying during that shooting in Virginia Tech, where was she when this was defeated? Why weren't people calling for the heads of the delegates in Virginia's House that opposed this measure, this bill that could have prevented deaths? Here's another clip from Katerina at that thing with President Obama this week.
As an attorney, I vow to do something because I feel that my right to feel safe in this country and the rights of our children to feel safe in this country are paramount and worth fighting for.
This is typical of the type of argument you get from someone trying to limit your rights.
Throwing children in there.
Yes, throwing children in there.
Oh, do it for the children.
You don't have a right to feel safe in this country. Do you know why? It's because you cannot define safe. What is safe? No one else around? That's the only way you're going to get to that point. When you add another person to the equation, well, they could decide to attack you, and thus you might not feel safe. No, Katerina, you don't have the right to feel safe, and neither do your children. That's life. Get over it. In this next clip, she's talking about Vice President Biden.
He is also an advocate for the rights of women and children.
Oh, here we go. More rights. Apparently, women and children have rights that the rest of us don't. Or are we supposed to believe that men, who you notice those are the only group she didn't mention, apparently men have rights that women and children don't? This is the problem. We define too many things as rights that aren't. If exercising a right requires me to give up mine, then it isn't a right, plain and simple. You exercising your rights requires nothing from me, and vice versa. But these liberals make up rights for everything they want on their agendas. Housing, well, that's a right. Food, that's a right. Medical care, hey, that's a right. Now feeling safe, now that's a right too. Not to be outdone talking about rights, here's a quote from the president during that same press conference.
Earlier this month, the Senate advanced some of the most important reforms designed to reduce gun violence. All of them are consistent with the Second Amendment. None of them will infringe on the rights of responsible gun owners. What they will do is keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people who put others at risk.
Now, how can you argue with that? Only that his proposed legislation isn't consistent with the Second Amendment. He does admit that it won't infringe on the rights of, quote, responsible, unquote, gun owners. Notice that word responsible, meaning people who act in such a way that the government deems you responsible. So what does that mean? Well, no one knows. But you can bet it'll be along the lines of responsible gun owners lock every single gun they have up in a safe, making it practically impossible to get to in the event of a robbery. Or responsible gun owners don't carry their weapons outside their homes except to and from hunting. Or even responsible gun owners only own guns the government allows citizens to possess. The president then goes on to name some of the names of children who have died from gun-related violence. And in that same spirit, we here at the Patrick Reagan Show would like to acknowledge some children who have been saved courtesy of a gun. One of them is Jimmy Rowland from Bethel, Oklahoma. He saved his mother and 4 other children from a masked man who was threatening them. They fled when Jimmy grabbed the family gun and pointed it at the assailant. Him and his 2 accomplices, by the way, were lifelong criminals and predators. The local sheriff stated that in all likelihood, Jimmy saved every one of these people's lives. Here's another story. Adam Cummings, he's 38, he's in Wichita, Kansas. He was diagnosed a paranoid schizophrenic. He could function normally at times, then he would snap and become violent. Now, because of his mental illness, his mother, Catherine Adams, had raised his daughter, his 15-year-old daughter. On March 17, 2000, at 10 p.m., Cummins, who was described as visibly agitated, appeared at his mom's home. Now, having first knowledge of his violent tendencies, she locked the front door and refused to let him inside. So what did he do? Did he walk off and say, oh, the door's locked? No, he kicked in the door. Now, what he did when he got inside was he assaulted her and started hitting her in the head with a claw hammer, fracturing her skull. Now, while this was going on, she yelled to her granddaughter to go get the gun. She didn't have to go figure out the safe combination, didn't have to run some little thing to get into the drawer that holds the gun. The 15-year-old ran and grabbed the gun. She got the gun from the nightstand in her grandmother's upstairs bedroom. It's a handgun. Now, by this time she had done that, her father, the crazy, paranoid schizophrenic, had bludgeoned her mother, or his mother, her grandmother, into unconsciousness, and then he started coming up the stairs. She met him at the top. His daughter met him at the top of the stairs, fired one shot, striking him in the abdomen, and he died a few minutes later. Now, police said over a long period, Cummins had had many dealings with law enforcement officials and mental health agencies. He had threatened police officers, mental health workers, even his ex-wife. For years, he had fought with his wife for custody of the girl, and the family had tried numerous times to have him institutionalized. And on the day he died, the day his daughter ended up having to shoot him, he had called his ex-wife and threatened to kill her. Police credited the 15-year-old girl with using appropriate force to stop a vicious assault. Now, Somehow, I don't think either of these children alone would have had the physical power to stop these assailants, but having and knowing how to use a gun proved to be their ultimate protector, the tool that stood between them and certain death to them and their loved ones.
That's strange. I've not heard about that all over the news.
No, you won't.
I've not heard it every 30 minutes like anything else. It's,
doesn't fit
strange.
the agenda.
Yeah.
And that's just two. That's not even... These things are happening all around the country every day.
You never hear about those.
No.
Never. So...
little interesting note. All right, we're up on the bottom of the hour break already here at the Patrick Regan Show. Actually, ran just a little over, so the next segment may be a little short. But when we come back, we'll hit a little bit more of this and look at, let's see, what else we got here. Well, we'll have something. And it'll be good.
It is Easter.
It'll be Easter, exactly. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Regan Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back to the Patrick Regan Show. Tori's depressed. He's miscuing songs.
I'm having a hard time today.
I told him, I said, if this was a nationwide radio program, which at some point it probably will be, but right now it is not. So we don't worry about screwing up music cues.
Well, that's good, because I did that one.
Yeah. I like when I'm saying, hey, I think you were supposed to play that one from the start.
Oh.
No, I queued a minute 15. Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, that's what that says.
Yeah. It said
In other words, Tori, shut up and read and do what you're supposed to do.
Oh.
That's what I need to be doing.
We'll go dock Tori's pay. Hey, give me half of that Wendy's sandwich.
Yes. And if Christy and Candace are listening on their way home from my grandmother's, this is a lesson for you. Anyway, go ahead.
Read the instructions.
Yeah.
Don't guess at the instructions. Don't assume that the last instruction carries over to the next instruction.
Yes, never assume, because you know what happens when we assume.
You're wrong?
Yes.
All right. All righty. Welcome back to the Patrick Regan Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. When we left off, we were talking about gun control and our El Presidente. Coming back here, we'll jump back into these clips from his press conference there on Thursday, and we'll just pick up with this one.
This is our best chance in more than a decade to take common sense steps that will save lives.
All right. Common sense steps to save lives. They always use that phrase when they're taking away your rights, don't they? That's just a common sense thing to do. Well, I guess to them that is. You having those pesky little freedom and liberty rights, that's just an impediment to the government, and the president is the government. So, sorry, Mr. President, but what you're proposing isn't common sense. And if you think it is, well, I guess it just shows you don't have any.
If there's one thing I've said consistently since I first ran for this office, nothing is more powerful than millions of voices calling for change.
So if millions of voices say they don't want an unconstitutional program like Obamacare, well, we're not going to listen to those. But if millions of voices call out to restrict the rights of American citizens, oh, okay, well, we'll listen to those people. This is why we have a representative republic, not a democracy. And this is a little civics lesson for all of you guys who, well, they're just no longer offer civics in high school. But a democracy is roughly equivalent to mob rule, whatever the majority wants. If that means locking up people for no reason or taking their property, taking their money, so be it. The majority voted for it. In our republic, with the Constitution, you cannot do things contrary to that document. That is the protector of the people, of our rights. I don't care how many people vote that you cannot have a gun. If the Constitution says you can, then that's all there is to it. If you want to change that, we can. The founders made the Constitution so you could make amendments to it, and that's how you go about doing it. That's why members of Congress and the president, they swear to uphold and defend the Constitution, because anything that violates that document, they should be voting against. It doesn't matter if every single person in their district wants them to vote the other way. Their first obligation is to the Constitution, not their voters. I'm sorry if that shatters some people's illusions about how this country was originally set up to work and should be working now, but really isn't. Your representatives' loyalties are to the Constitution that they swear to uphold and defend. They don't swear to uphold and defend the interests of businesses in their district or certain key donors or people who might have pictures of the congressional representative in a seedy motel room. Their first loyalty is supposed to be the Constitution. Now, Rand Paul was on Sean Hannity's show this week, and if you didn't catch it, here is what he said about the president's proposals.
My question to the president is, call me if any of your reforms would have saved those kids at Sandy Hook. If anything he's proposing would have changed the outcome, I'll listen to him. I haven't heard one proposal from him or Harry Reid that would have saved one life.
Exactly right. Because the president's aim, I guess, pardon the bad pun, but his aim is to further restrict gun ownership. That's what he really wants to do.
The only thing that would have changed the outcome, potentially changed the outcome, is something that so many people don't want to hear, and that's self-defense. That if someone there had a concealed carry, if someone had been armed, they might have had a fighting chance. They might not have saved everybody, but they might have been able to save some of those.
Wow, that's scary. I'm thinking like Rand Paul, or he's thinking like me. Just as I stated at the start of this segment, if the Virginia House of Delegates had passed the law allowing guns on the Virginia Tech campus, lives might have been saved. If you don't allow guns and you have a shooting, then something has to change. The answer isn't to not allow guns. You're already doing that, and it didn't work. So the other option is to allow guns. You know, what is it, the classic definition of insanity if you keep doing the same thing over and over but looking for a different outcome? Well, here it is. You don't allow guns. You have a shooting. So what's the answer? Still don't allow guns? Boy, that sure sounds intelligent and reasoned. In this next clip, Senator Paul makes a logical argument, which is sure not to resonate with gun-grabbing liberals, since it's just outright pure hatred of guns. It overrules the sensible part of their brains.
Criminals do crime. They don't pay attention to our laws. We have laws against murder, and we should have laws against murder, but that doesn't seem to be deterring these people. The penalty for murder can be death. It can be life in prison. We have significant penalties for murder, and that's not deterring these crimes. So somehow an extra permit or a fine for buying a gun improperly is going to stop someone who's a mass murderer?
There you go. He is accurately laying the blame on the criminals for all this crime. They are the ones causing it. Criminals, crime. Do you hear how they use the same word roots there?
What happens so often is politicians just want to act quickly. They want to do something, and the president's into showmanship. He wants to show people that he cares, but in the end, he's not really going to do anything that would have made the outcome different.
Again, good reasoning from Senator Paul, which is sure to be discarded since it doesn't line up with what the president wants, what liberals want. Do you see how that works? How you can tell what their real agenda might be? If you can make a logical, reasoned argument and still they don't listen, then they aren't really interested in solving the problem, just using something to advance their agenda. If they were looking to solve the problem, then they would welcome a reasoned argument because it would be a correct one. All right, we're up on the last break here on the Patrick Riggins Show already. This hour's just flying by like it does every week. Tori really need to take this show out to about 3 hours. He won't even talk to me now since he screwed up the cue on that last music. Is it shooting? There he goes.
Shut up!
Oh, yeah. Tori is all over this show today.
15 minutes. I get to go hide my own Easter eggs. I'll never find them.
Did you hide the cue for those shows in the Easter egg, too? Hey, too early for that.
It's too soon.
All right. This is Patrick Riggins on the Liberty Lighthouse Radio Network. We will return.
When the voice is screaming, I'm much too loud. Take a look in the distance.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back to the Patrick Riggins Show. Listen to some correctly cued Veruca Salt. You got one right.
I got one right. It's the end of the show.
Yeah, right here at the end. You pulled it out. You pulled victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yeah, if you want to call it that. I pulled something from her.
And from where did you pull that?
We're just focus on what you're talking about. We're not talking about me.
But enough about Tori and his mistakes. All right. This is Patrick Riggins. And you're listening to my show, The Patrick Riggins Show. Works out good that way. Found a show that was named after me. You don't know how hard that search was. Looked around and finally found a radio station running a Patrick Riggins show and thought, hey, my name's Patrick Riggins. That works out really well.
And luckily, there's an opening.
There's an opening. They didn't have a Patrick Riggins to host it. And we're here on, the best radio network around, the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. All right, this segment. What I want to do is kind of back off the gun control thing there and just give you a feel-good story here, something that we're always preaching about. Americans will help each other. Now, I read a story this week, and I wanted to share it because it demonstrates how things work when the government is not involved. Now, I talk a lot about reducing the size of government, getting it out of our lives, and the arguments I run up against are always the same. What will happen to the poor people without the government? There will be people starving and dying in the streets. To those illogical arguments, I always ask, what did we do before all these government programs? Bodies weren't piling up in the streets. Were there not any poor people before then? Now, of course they were. But there were churches and civic organizations and other groups that took care of the poor, the people who couldn't genuinely help themselves. And that's the important part. We as Americans don't like supporting lazy people. But people who are in real need, we don't mind helping. Now, the Chicago Sun-Times ran a story about a 19-year-old named Monty Johnson. Now, his father died when he was a baby. And if that wasn't enough, he was left an orphan when his mother died, along with 20 others. It was at a nightclub stampede in 2003 in Chicago. At the time of the incident, he and the other children affected by the tragedy were promised money from a college scholarship fund, which was set up by the Chicago Public Schools. Interestingly, though, Johnson and the others never received any money. Surprise. The teenager was able to enroll at South Carolina State University through a band scholarship, but he was later forced to drop out because he could no longer afford the tuition. You mean the government promised something but they didn't deliver? Boy, that's unheard of. Of course, now putting aside the fact that this was more than likely taxpayer money being promised, something that shouldn't be done in the first place. This clearly demonstrates, though, why you shouldn't be relying on government. But back to this story real quick. Mr. Johnson, he had been attending South Carolina State University, and it was on a music scholarship, but his money ran out, and he had to come back home to Chicago last August. Since then, he has been volunteering his time at his alma mater, and he's been helping students practice their music because he was a music major, actually a trumpet player. Fortunately for him, the Chicago Sun-Times had run a story about him. And what happened? Well, an anonymous person stepped up and donated $25,000 to his school tuition so he could return to the university there in South Carolina. The donor, who doesn't want to reveal his identity, or her identity, they won't state to Mr. Johnson, they promise more money if Johnson maintains his grades. Now, the paper had talked to the donor, but of course they're keeping his or her name anonymous. A quote from them said, though, "I grew up poor, and my father did everything so that he could send me to school." This donor also said, "People talk about inequality, but the greatest source of equality is a good education." Chicago Public Schools spokesman Robin Ziegler said Friday that attorneys for the young survivors of the nightclub victims, the ones whose scholarship has been set aside, they've been contacted about their eligibility, and that some families have reached back to the school officials. The process to distribute the money has not started yet. Some of the children aren't yet old enough to be in college, and others have to prove they are enrolled to get the money. Monty Johnson, who attended the Chicago Public Schools, of course, as we said, he's still waiting on his check. However, when that day comes, instead of taking the money, in addition to the scholarship, the money put forth by the anonymous donor, what Johnson plans to do is donate that money from the Chicago Public Schools back to the scholarship fund so other needy students can benefit. His quote was, "Somebody gave to us, why not give back?" Right, he is. This is how it used to work before we had government hijacking our education system, along with just about everything else in this country. Americans are very giving people. They are very generous when it comes to helping people who actually need it. This results in the best use of the money given. This is why these arguments about people starving without government help and people not being educated, they're all lies. And both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, they're both responsible for this. Now, we've played this stuff before, and how much time do we have, Tori?
About 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Exactly.
I don't have time to run those through. But if you've listened to our past shows, you know what I'm talking about. We had some quotes, some clips from Marco Rubio talking about, hey, how he benefited from federal student loans and how he likes Medicare. And same thing with Paul Ryan also stating he's glad Medicare is there. And that's what I mean by both sides demonstrating that they're really not interested in getting government out of your lives. They're really interested in being in control of government in your lives, just like the liberals are. Both sides want to control your life, want to tell you what to do, want to be responsible for the purse strings. That's a really good way to control you, is if they control your money, the money you're getting, and make you dependent on them. But if you want to hear some of those clips, the same clips we played a couple of shows ago, you can go to our archives at youtube.com/Patrick Riggin Show, youtube.com/Patrick Riggin Show. Look back in the archives, you'll see some where we talk about Marco Rubio and Paul Ryan and some of the things they were talking about. Also, we're up on the end of the show here. If you want some information about the show, you can go to facebook.com/Patrick Riggin Show, facebook.com/Patrick Riggin Show. Be sure and hit the like button. If you want to email us and complain about Tori's lack of paying attention during the show.
What? What were you saying? I wasn't paying attention.
Exactly. What was that?
What was you saying?
You can you can email us at patrickrigginshow@gmail.com. You can also drop us a card or letter here via the station WNOX here on Kingston Pike in Knoxville, Tennessee.
It's raining again.
And it's raining again. Great. I get to get out in it and get behind all the people in the left lane.
Me too.
Join us next Sunday afternoon when once again we'll talk about freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. We'll bring Tori some coffee so he'll be on his game.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter, everyone. This is Patrick Riggins, and we'll see you next Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Have a great week.
Join us again next week for a solid dose of truth on The Patrick Riggins Show. Every Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. Be there.